He thought that by being the easy employee who never asked for more, he was building a bank of goodwill, but he eventually discovered that the only thing he had built was a massive discount for his employer at his own expense. In the professional world, there is a quiet tragedy we see every day in recruitment. We call it the loyalty tax. It is the invisible fee paid by those who believe that hard work is always noticed, and that fairness is a default setting in corporate accounting. They believe that if they just keep their heads down and do a great job, the company will do the right thing. But companies don't do the right thing. They do the profitable thing, and paying you less than you are worth is very profitable. It was 2015. He was 34 years old, working as a senior software engineer for a mid-sized fintech firm. He had been there for 4 years. He was the reliable one. When a server went down at 2 a.m., he was the first to log in. When a junior developer was struggling with a complex piece of code, he was the one who sat with them for hours. He knew the code base better than the CTO. He was earning $115,000 a year. Every year during his performance review, his manager would spend 45 minutes praising his dedication. "You're the engine of this team," the manager would say. "We literally couldn't do this without you." And then, at the end of the meeting, the manager would hand him a letter confirming a standard 3% raise. He would look at the letter, feel a brief flash of disappointment, and then swallow it. He didn't want to be that guy. He didn't want to seem greedy or ungrateful. He liked his team, he liked the product, and he told himself that in the long run, his loyalty would be rewarded with a massive jump or a significant equity grant. He smiled, thanked his manager, and went back to work. He never negotiated, not once. Over those 4 years, the market for software engineers had exploded. The standard salary for someone with his specific skill set had moved from $110,000 to nearly $160,000. But because he never checked the market and never pushed back, his salary had only crept up to $125,000. He was effectively providing the company with a $35,000 annual donation. Then the company hired a new engineer, a mid-level developer with 3 years less experience than him. One afternoon, while they were pair programming, the new hire mentioned his relocation package and his starting salary, $145,000. He felt a cold, sharp spike of adrenaline. The person he was currently mentoring, the person who didn't know how the core API functioned, was earning $20,000 more than him. He didn't say anything to the new hire. He went home and sat in his dark living room. He felt a profound sense of betrayal. He felt like a fool. He realized that for 4 years, he had been subsidizing the company's growth with his own family's future wealth. He did the math. Between the missed raises and the market gap, he had left over $150,000 on the table since he started. That was a house down payment. That was a college fund. That was 4 years of goodwill that turned out to be worth zero. He finally decided to act. He spent a weekend researching market rates and preparing a presentation. He went into his manager's office on Monday, not with a demand, but with a case for adjustment. His manager listened. He nodded. He looked genuinely sympathetic. And then he said the words that every recruiter knows is the death knell of a relationship. "I completely agree that you're worth more, but my hands are tied by the budget. The best I can do is another 5%. If you stay patient, I'm sure we can fix this next year." Next year, the same promise he had heard for 4 years. He realized in that moment that his manager wasn't a villain. He was just an executive playing a game. And the game's rules were simple. Pay the least amount required to keep the talent from leaving. Because he had never negotiated, the company had categorized him as a low flight risk asset. They didn't feel they needed to pay him market rate because they assumed he was too comfortable or too afraid to leave. The recruiter's perspective on this is clinical. Negotiation isn't an act of aggression. It's a process of price discovery. If you don't negotiate, you aren't being loyal. You are being opaque. You are hiding your true market value from your employer, and they will always default to the lowest possible number you are willing to accept. By not negotiating his starting salary and his subsequent raises, he had set his internal price so low that the company literally couldn't afford to fix it without breaking their entire budget structure. It is much easier for a company to hire a new person at a high rate than it is to give a massive 30% correction to an existing employee. He eventually left the company. He took a job at a competitor for $165,000, a $40,000 jump overnight. When he handed in his resignation, his manager suddenly found the missing budget. They offered to match the $165,000. They offered him a principal title. They offered him everything he had been asking for. But it was too late. The trust was gone. He realized that they had the money all along. They just didn't think he was worth the expense until he threatened their productivity. He realized that his loyalty had been treated as a commodity to be exploited, not a virtue to be rewarded. I see this person every week. They are the nice employees who realize, usually 5 years too late, that they have been underpaid by $500,000 over the course of a decade. They don't understand that the market doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't care that you're a team player. It only cares about the replacement cost of your labor. If you don't remind the company of that replacement cost through regular professional negotiation, they will slowly but surely let your salary rot. We call this the negotiation gap. It is the difference between what you are worth and what you are willing to ask for. For many, this gap is the most expensive thing they own. He thought he was being easy to work with. He thought he was building a reputation. But in the eyes of the payroll department, he was just a cheap line item. Negotiation is a skill. And like any skill, if you don't use it, it withers. By the time he actually tried to negotiate, he was so filled with resentment that he couldn't do it effectively. He didn't negotiate from a position of power. He negotiated from a position of hurt. The recruiter's advice is simple. Never accept a standard raise without a conversation. Never accept a job offer without a counter. Not because you are greedy, but because you need to establish your value in the only language the corporation truly speaks, dollars and cents. He is now at his new job. He earns more, but he is more cynical. He knows now that the family culture of his old firm was just a facade for a lopsided financial arrangement. He knows that his manager's praise was a substitute for a paycheck. Every decision has a cost. Some we pay in the awkwardness of a difficult conversation. Others we pay in the hundreds of thousands of dollars we lose by staying silent. He chose the silence, and it was the most expensive silence of his life. The lesson is clear. If you don't ask for what you're worth, you'll eventually be paid what you're worth to a budget, not to a market. And those two numbers are rarely the same. Don't wait for next year. Next year is where dreams and bank accounts go to die. Negotiate today or pay for it for the rest of your career.